What is going on, everybody? The Cleveland Browns Tailgate Show is back. I'm just going to go ahead and shout the stream really quickly so all the viewers can go ahead and hop in. Hope you guys are doing swell today. The Cleveland Browns are back, and it's big time, money time. The Browns have to perform. Let me know really quickly what you guys think the score will be this week for this game. Again, I'm just going to shout the streams really quickly, and then we'll hop straight into it. Please let me know what are your guys' scores predictions for the game this week. Do you think the Browns will finally get that big-time win against the Ravens and also clinch that playoff berth, which is very possible this week against the Baltimore Ravens? With a win at 10-3 is going to be very difficult for a lot of other teams to catch up to us. So again, let me just hop straight into it. My name is Shawn Stevenson. I am the host of the Cleveland Browns Tailgate Show, sponsored and brought to you by Sports Illustrated BrownsDigest. I am a contributing writer with Sports Illustrated BrownsDigest, bringing you guys articles alongside lead editor Pete Smith and Brandon Little. Be sure to check out the website at si.com/NFL/Browns. Also, after the show, you can join me throughout the Browns game. Say if you're unable to watch it or you're just in an area that's not getting the game for some apparent reason, but it's Monday Night Football, so everyone should be seeing it. Be sure to check out the website for the live game thread where I do give live game commentary and updates throughout the entire game from the kickoff all the way down to the last whistle. Again, that's going to be over at the Sports Illustrated website. And let's hop straight into it. The Cleveland Browns are hosting the Baltimore Ravens this week. Your Cleveland Browns are at 9-3. Yes, you heard me right. The Cleveland Browns are at 9-3. Their first winning season since 2007. I'm excited. This is huge for the Browns. Arguably the biggest game of the season. Potentially, depending on what happens this week, and of course what happens against the Steelers and the Colts, or potentially Bengals, if they're able to continue open that door for the Browns in AFC North. But we first have to win in prime time this Monday night against the Baltimore Ravens in order to move to 10-3 and to keep striving for that AFC North crown. Now, looking at the Browns so far this season, they are the 21st ranked offense, again, improving on a weekly basis. A lot of that can be thanked to Kevin Stefanski and his work that he's done with Alexander Van Pelt for Baker Mayfield and his improvement. Obviously, you guys watched the game last week, or at least saw the highlights of that dominant performance they had in the first half, winning 38-7. I say winning because really only that half is which the team performed at its highest level. But we all know football is a game of two halves. So you have to play 4 quarters, and that's going to be very important this week in a situation that they do get up to a big lead early in the first half, is being able to manage the game properly and still put points on the board. Now, looking at their defense, they are a 9th-ranked unit, only allowing 4.1 yards per carry in terms of the run game, which is very good in terms of the opponent that they have this week against the Baltimore Ravens, which is a team that loves to run the ball. But on the flip side, the Browns are also a unit that love to run the ball themselves. We're no longer the number 1 ranked rushing attack in the NFL, obviously given the fact that they threw the ball with so much success last week. We are down to the 6th highest rushing attack in the league, but we all know we have the best running back tandem in the league with Kareem Hunt and Nick Chubb in the backfield. They're averaging 4.9 yards per carry, which is huge for this team. Nick Chubb leads all running backs in the fourth quarter, averaging almost 10 yards per carry, which is huge for that team. As we both know, when you love to run the ball, that means you have to be able to pound the ball at the end of the game to control that time of possession and run the clock out, which they've done with so much success. Now, on the flip side, you look at the Baltimore Ravens. They're currently the 30th ranked offense. Been having some struggles with Lamar Jackson this season. Obviously, the biggest weakness for this team has been their offensive line. They've been dealing with some injuries along the offensive line. The biggest one, Ronnie Stanley, that left tackle. Now Orlando Brown, who's usually their right tackle, flips over to the left side of the offensive line. And that right side has been causing all sorts of trouble for the Baltimore Ravens offense. They really can't find any stability with DJ Fluker and Tyree Phillips. So this is going to be a huge matchup for the Browns defense to take advantage of that, get pressure on Lamar Jackson, and continue this route to really to continue to set themselves up for a great seed in the playoffs. Currently sitting at the 5th seed in the AFC playoff picture. This will be another opportunity again for them to get a better record and to clinch that playoff spot moving to 10-3 with a victory today. The Baltimore Ravens on the flip side are sitting at 7-5, just outside of the AFC playoff picture. So they're right in the hunt, and a win this week could likely propel them into that position, taking over the Raiders, who had a loss to the Colts. And again, it's big for the Browns, one, just to establish themselves as a top-tier contender in the AFC. There are very few teams that have a better record than the Browns. Last week, they had a huge statement game against the Tennessee Titans, and they look to carry over that momentum this week against the Baltimore Ravens, especially at home. Now, looking at the AFC North crown, this is going to be the thing that most Browns fans should be paying attention to. The Pittsburgh Steelers have lost 2 straight. First against the Washington Football 2 weeks ago, and then yesterday in Sunday Night Football against the Buffalo Bills. This has swung open the door for the Cleveland Browns to get a chance to win the division and potentially the number 2 seed in the AFC. Now, there has been some changes where there's an extra playoff spot in the NFL playoffs this year, but on the same token, that number 2 seed no longer gets the bye week. In the situation that the Browns do win the AFC North and then get that number 2 seed, that just gives them a better opponent to potentially face. So in this situation, if they beat the Ravens, they could be seeing the Ravens if they win out after this game, or in a situation they do win this game. Also, if they do win and the Ravens start to kind of implode a little bit, you look at some better matchups in the playoffs, potentially maybe the Colts or the Dolphins, potentially even the Raiders, whoever comes in at that 7th seed. Now, when you look at the schedule, this is going to be a situation where the Browns need some help. Luckily, we're not in a situation where the help is for us to get into playoffs. We're likely already going to be there. We have a 96% chance, according to ESPN Football Pro Index, so that's huge for us. But looking at the Steelers in their schedule, this week or this upcoming week, they'll be facing off against the Cincinnati Bengals. That's likely going to be a win for them. So you look at the last 2 games on their schedule. Week 16 is going to be huge. Every Browns fan needs to be rooting for the Indianapolis Colts to win that game, because in this situation that the Browns win tonight and they beat the New York Giants, we should likely beat the Jets. That will place both the Browns and the Steelers at 13-3. If that happens and the Browns win that game, that will propel the Browns to number 1 in the AFC North, and that's going to be huge for their playoff chances, for not only for us to get to the playoffs, which is almost a guarantee depending on if we win out the rest of the season, but really to win a playoff matchup. Now, us being Browns fans, we've all dealt with that struggle of, what's going to happen this year or always next year. No more of that. Right now is what the Browns have, and right now Monday Night Football is going to be huge for them in order for us to have that deep playoff run and potentially win a playoff game. So looking at the injury report, there's going to be some familiar names on there. Denzel Ward is still out with that calf injury. We want him to be healthy heading into the playoffs. Again, looking into our next 2 matchups against the Giants and the Jets, I likely don't see him coming back just because those opponents, the Browns should be able to handle without Denzel Ward, and you want him at full health, especially going against the Steelers in Week 17 in the final finale of the season, and then also heading into the playoffs. Also, receiver Cordero Hodge, he's still dealing with that hamstring injury that he pulled back in the pregame warmups a few weeks ago. So we're hoping that he can get back healthy, as he's been a solid receiver for the Browns when his name has been called. And then lastly, tight end Austin Hooper, he is listed as questionable, as he is dealing with a neck injury. So something to monitor to see if he will be playing this week. Now, looking at the Baltimore Ravens, a team that's really been riddled by injuries so far this season. The injury bug is still biting them. You look at defensive end Calais Campbell. He's actually going to be playing this week. He was listed as questionable on the injury report on Friday, dealing with the calf injury. But again, playing on Monday night, it gives teams a little bit extra for those players to heal up. You look at defensive back Anthony Levine. He's questionable with the abdomen injury. Cornerback Jimmy Smith, he's questionable as well with the groin injury. And then you look at defensive tackle Broderick Washington. He was in concussion protocol this week. He was listed as questionable, but he's most likely going to play this night after Friday having a full participation in practice. Then you look at cornerback Tramon Williams. He's listed as doubtful right now in this game. He may not play, but that's going to be huge for this Baltimore Ravens defense because he's been playing a lot of snaps over the past few weeks. And for someone that's 37 years old, that's a big target that a lot of teams like to pick on that defense. Obviously, you have two great cornerbacks in Marcus Peters and Marlon Humphrey on the outside, and it's very difficult for them to pretty much allow any receiver open. So we were pretty much expecting Kevin Stefanski to find a way to target Tramon Williams. In this situation that he doesn't play, Jimmy Smith, Anthony Everett, those are players that you want to look to target because, again, Marcus Peters and Marlon Humphreys are two stout corners on the outside that could cause some trouble for these Browns receivers. And then lastly, they do have Luke Wilson. He's questionable with the hip injury, which happened on Friday. Now, their depth chart for the Ravens, this is going to be a familiar team that we've seen a lot. Lamar Jackson at quarterback. Now, the running back situation is a little bit more clouded. It's kind of difficult to know exactly who they're going to play and who's going to get the majority of touches. They pretty much have a three-headed running back in J.K. Dobbins, Mark Ingram, and Gus Edwards. You'll see a lot of situations once they get to the red zone, they love to feed Gus Edwards the ball. But on goal line situations, expect J.K. Dobbins or Mark Ingram to be those players in there to get some touches. J.K. Dobbins is a very talented player. A lot of you Ohio State Buckeye fans remember J.K. all day, was very dominant in his time as a Buckeye. And it's going to be very incumbent on the Browns defense to maintain him as much as possible and don't allow a lot of free runs because that's when this Baltimore Ravens offense is at its best. Also at fullback, they do have Patrick Ricard, one of the better fullbacks in the league. At receiver, you look at Marquise Brown, Hollywood Brown. He's been having a year where he's been struggling. There's been games where he didn't even have a catch, barely even had a target. So this is going to be very big on whether it be Kevin Johnson or Terrence Mitchell for one of them to step up to continue to provide good coverage and not allow them to get too settled against this Browns secondary. Now, many of you may remember back in week one, Hollywood Brown did have some big catches down the field over Andrew Sendejo. But as the season has progressed, Sendejo has played better on that third level and kind of being that security blanket that the Browns have needed. And it's always better to do it late than never. And Sendejo has definitely stepped up in that situation for the Browns in the back end of that secondary. Now, with their other receivers, they look at Miles Boykin and Devin Duvernay as some receivers to step up to provide some production out of that receiver group. And then they also have Willie Snead, a player that plays out of the slot. At tight end, again, you have Mark Andrews. He's a player that caused the Browns a lot of problems over the last 2 years. And even in that first game, he had that one-handed touchdown in the back of the end zone. So you hope that the Browns linebackers and defensive backs can do a better job of covering him over the middle and intermediate parts of the field. Now, looking at this offensive line, this is the area that the Ravens have the biggest question marks. You look at left tackle Orlando Brown. He's been decent after flipping over to the left side. But it's once you get past that left tackle, a little bit more questions arise. Bradley Bozeman, Patrick McCarry, those are players that weren't necessarily big-time starters, and now they're moving up in the depth chart, and now they have a lot more responsibility along that offensive line, and they haven't played the greatest. Ben Powers has been solid at the right guard position, but when you look at their right tackle, DJ Fluker and Tyree Phillips are two players that the Ravens haven't been able to trust pretty much at all this season since Ronnie Stanley went down. Playing that right tackle spot, DJ Fluker just hasn't provided enough at all for them. There's been situations where they've taken Fluker out and put Phillips in throughout the game, basically playing hot potato at that right tackle position. And if this is the situation where they can't get any consistent play, I fully expect Olivier Vernon and Myles Garrett to take advantage of that matchup. And hopefully defensive coordinator Joe Woods will find a way to scheme against them and essentially force Lamar Jackson to that side of the offensive line where he hasn't got the best protection throughout this season. On the flip side, you look at their defense. Again, familiar names you're going to see. Derek Wolfe, Calais Campbell, a player that was listed as questionable. He's going to be playing this week. Brandon Williams. Now, a new name that wasn't there back in week one, Yannick Ngakoue, who they traded for a fifth-round pick. He's going to be a player that you're going to see in a lot of passing down situations. They still have Pernell McPhee. And at the linebacker position, you have L.J. Fort, another former Buckeye, and Malik Harrison. Patrick Queen, another rookie, that has been playing better as the season has progressed. So he's a player that they definitely trust at that Mike linebacker position. And then again, at the strong side backer, you have Matthew Judon and Tyus Bowser. Again, just familiar names that you've always seen. And then lastly, at the secondary, you have Marcus Peters, Marlon Humphrey. And then you have a few little question marks with Tramon Williams dealing with that thigh injury. And then on the back, you have Chuck Clark and Deshaun Elliott. So looking at what this team can do, the quarterback is going to be the biggest position for success for the Browns to get a W this week. You look at Baker Mayfield and what he was able to do, having 2 touchdowns, no interceptions, 4 touchdowns against the Titans last week. 6 touchdowns, no interceptions has been huge for Baker Mayfield. You look at the fact that weather has been a huge factor for the Browns this season and how much it's really negatively impacted the team in terms of their offensive production after the bye week. Now, this may be a situation where Kevin Stefanski may have to adjust his offensive scheme a little bit because it is going to be a windy day. And we've seen that wind and really cold weather. It is getting later into December in a night game. It was snowing a little bit earlier today. This could potentially impact the performance of Baker Mayfield. But in this situation, Kevin Stefanski still will likely have full faith in Baker Mayfield to be successful in throwing the ball. You look at the past few weeks, and he's really came out and really set the tone by throwing the ball. A lot off of play action. Baker Mayfield currently in the NFL is one of the best passers of the football off of play action. Whether it's on bootlegs, speed outs, design rollouts, Baker Mayfield has taken full advantage of the opportunities that Kevin Stefanski is placing in front of him. And if that's the case, if the Browns really want to have full success against this Baltimore Ravens defense, it's really going to be on Baker Mayfield and him to find success throwing the ball. Now, you look at the fact that Jarvis Landry is going to be your number 1 receiver. He's going to be matched up against Marcus Peters and Marlon Humphrey throughout this game. So they're definitely going to find ways to bottle him up. But I fully expect Jarvis Landry to still get that number 1 target share that he's been getting on a weekly basis. But again, it comes down to how Mayfield performs with this weather. You know, Stefanski has given Mayfield a very simple offense to run in terms of who his options are when he's going through his reads. That was something that he struggled with in the first matchup, was who do I throw the ball to, you know, at these different points, depending on where the pressure is coming from, where the linebackers and defensive backs are dropping back into zone coverage. And also, the Ravens are a team that love the blitz. They lead the NFL in blitzing pressures and 6-man, 7 pressures in the NFL over the last 3 seasons. And that's something that Mayfield has struggled with, you know, throughout this season. But over the last few weeks, he's been getting more and more comfortable within the playbook. So in this situation, you can expect checkdowns to Kareem Hunt or Nick Chubb underneath to Jarvis Landry or to Rashard Higgins. These are going to be the plays that are really going to help move the chains. In a game like this, where you have 2 teams that run the ball, Lamar Jackson has been very inconsistent with his ability to throw the ball down the field and outside the numbers because of the pressure that he's been under. You need Mayfield to really step up in this matchup and take full advantage of what the offense gives him. Now, also, when you look at the red zone, this has been an area that we wanted to see more of Baker Mayfield, and boy, has he stepped up this season. You look at the fact that he has 17 touchdowns to no interceptions when targeting the end zone. There have been situations where he has missed some players that were open from poor throws. You know, hopefully that's not something that pops up during this game. But he's not turning the ball over in the red zone, and he's making the smart play, whether that's just throwing the ball out of bounds or just taking a simple check down for a few yards and allowing to himself to get to the next play. This is the growth that we wanted to see from Baker Mayfield from year 2 to year 3. Obviously, there was a regression under Freddie Kitchens, but Kevin Stefanski has figured out this is the best way to utilize Mayfield. And in order for him to continue to have success, is to not turn the ball over, something that he's done with success. Since the bye week, he has not had an interception since, I believe it was week 6 or week 7, which is huge for this Browns team. And Mayfield has to continue with that success of not turning the ball over. Now you look at Lamar Jackson, and it has not been the greatest season for him compared to last year and what he was able to do throwing the ball. Now, the Baltimore Ravens are a team that really finds a way to utilize his skill set that's very different from any other team in NFL. So it's not relatively easy to scheme up against him in terms of the defense and how to contain him because they have such a unique offensive scheme on a weekly basis. Now, something they will always utilize is Lamar Jackson's mobility, his, athletic ability to use his legs and to get out of pocket is something that they're always going to find a way to use, whether that's run pass option. They like to use a lot of pistol where they have the running back and Lamar Jackson lined up or somebody lined up right behind him out of shotgun formations where they can use read option, allow him to use his legs, and then also use play action. But when you look at his performance last week, he only threw for 100 yards. But in that time that he's on the field, he's very efficient, even though his offensive line hasn't provided that level of play that you expect from him compared to last year. You see that, even though he's throwing the ball with, limited numbers in terms of passing yards, he still finds a way to get the ball into the end zone, whether it be with his legs or with his arm. And this is going to be big on the Browns secondary for them to really step up and not allow the tight ends to really expose this defense. That's something that we've seen, throughout the season. Now, the Browns defense have done a good job in terms of limiting what other defenses can do. They've been able to force turnovers, get after the quarterback, even with Myles Garrett out with injury. Olivier Vernon has definitely stepped up. Adrian Claiborne has been able to do more. Sheldon Richardson has been huge along the interior. And those are players you want to see step up and players that you need to contain Lamar Jackson. So in this situation that they're able to run the ball with some success, which I fully expect them to, the Ravens aren't just a team that you can completely stop the run game unless you get out on an early lead. And that's going to be one of the situations where if the Browns do get out on an early lead, similar to what they did against the Tennessee Titans, that limits the amount of effectiveness you get out of Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson isn't the type of quarterback that you want dropping back and throwing 30 times a game. That's not a recipe for success with him. Now, that's not saying that he doesn't have the ability to throw the ball with success, but he's just not someone that you want to rely on throwing it 30 plus times. In a situation that he's limited to where he can't use his legs anymore, then you really don't reap the full benefit of having Lamar Jackson at quarterback. Now, looking at the running backs, this is a group that you kind of fear a little bit with the Baltimore Ravens. Now, you look at Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt. These are arguably, the best running back duo in the NFL. Nick Chubb heading into this week was number 4 in terms of rushing yards, and that's big for a player that missed 4 games. And he's still to provide that much production in terms of running the ball. And when he can do that, it definitely causes, some issues for the defense, especially with the offensive scheme that Kevin Stefanski likes to run. When you have 2 running backs that have very different running styles but can run the ball effectively, it causes a lot of tension on a defense. Now, I've been saying it throughout the season. Kevin Stefanski, he talked about it a lot in the offseason, and he's really shown that throughout this year is the marriage between the run and the pass. When the run looks like the pass, that's what really makes play action so good, especially for Baker Mayfield, who has shown, success throwing the ball on the run. When you can fake a handoff to Nick Chubb or to Kareem Hunt and have defenders commit to that run, that allows a lot of plays open on the back end when you have those bootlegs, when you have those rollouts by Mayfield, either to his right or left side. Generally to his right is when he finds the most success, and then throwing back across the field against the weak side of the formation. That's when you see Cordero Hodge come down and make big plays. Donovan Peoples-Jones on that double play last week, we had the 75-yard touchdown. All those are set up by the play action and the success of the run game. Now, Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt didn't have the biggest production in terms of the ground game last week, but this is going to be another opportunity for them to really set the tone. Now, if you guys remember last year when the Browns beat the Ravens back in week 4, it was based off of the run game. Nick Chubb had a huge performance on the ground, and that's what you really want to replicate this week against the Ravens. The Ravens has shown the ability to be susceptible against the run, and the Browns are a team that has done it with success on a weekly basis, and they have to do that again. Now, on the flip side, you look at J.K. Dobbins, Gus Edwards, Mark Ingram. These are very downhill runners that once they see a hole, they burst through the hole very strong. They break tackles. And then you have to add in the fact you have Lamar Jackson, a player that can run the read option and cause you even more trouble, when you have to stop the run in terms of your front 7, including your linemen and your linebackers. It's going to be huge for this Browns defense to tackle with consistency. You look at Mack Wilson. That's a player that he's been playing better in run support. He's had some coverage issues, this season, but you expect a big game out of him. Sione Takitaki, He came off the COVID list a couple weeks ago, and he's been huge all season in terms of the run game. He's one of the highest graded run linebackers according to Pro Football Focus this season. You need a big game out of Taki. Lamar Jackson, once he usually pulls the ball down and read option, he goes outside of the tackles, and that's going to be the situation where you need to control the edge and not allow plays to get outside of you. You look at Olivier Vernon as another player along the defensive line that does a good job of holding the edge. If you're able to hold the edge and force runs inside, that gives you more opportunities to get more hats to the football, and that's something the Browns defense has to do with success. And again, tackling. Tackling is huge. Now, we haven't really seen too many of the tackling issues or inconsistencies that we've seen over the past decade with the Browns defenses, but, there's always a situation that one week they may not want to tackle, and this can't be one of those weeks. They did a very good, I'm not going to say very good, they did an excellent job bottling up Derrick Henry last week against the Titans and then forcing them to throw the ball after getting to an early lead. Now you're facing a very different offense in how they like to utilize and scheme up the run game. It's not the same. We're going to line up in single back or power eye, strong eye formations with multiple tight ends every single time and try to get Derrick Henry the ball on one-on-one matchups. This is a team that likes to use a lot of misdirection, jet sweeps, a lot of read option counters, power sweeps. Those are the ways that they get a lot of these players with pulling guards up the field into that second level where those linebackers have to make plays. So if the Browns are able to stop the run and have that success that they had last week, like they did against Derrick Henry, this is going to be big on Malcolm Smith. Again, Mack Wilson, B.J. Goodson in the middle of that defense. These players have to come up and make plays and fill the holes on a consistent snap. Every down, they have to be prepared for the run because that's what they're going to do, early and often with this Ravens team. You saw Lamar Jackson only threw for 107 yards last week, but he still had 2 touchdowns through the air and 1 on the ground. He's going to figure out a way to get to the end zone, and it's going to be incumbent on the Browns to find success and prevent him from throwing the ball. Now, again, the Cleveland Browns Tailgate Show is brought to you by Sports Illustrated BrownsDigest. And what would a tailgate be without a tailgate recipe of the week? And this week, decided to mix it up. We have Bourbon Blueberry Lemonade. So we decided to give you guys a cocktail. It is Monday Night Football, so there's nothing better than a victory drink or a Victory Monday drink after the Browns win this week. So again, Bourbon Blueberry Lemonade, quick video, and we'll get right back into it. Again, the Cleveland Browns Tailgate Show is brought to you by Sports Illustrated BrownsDigest. I'm a contributing writer. You guys can go ahead and give me a follow on any social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, at SHWN Stevenson. And let's get right back into it. So one of the things that I was really interested about is how much success Baker Mayfield will have throwing the ball in the weather conditions, mostly in the wind. Now, you're looking at 16, 17 mile per hour winds. They're right on the lake. So there's definitely going to be some snow coming in. And in these tough weather games, that's where we're seeing really the lowest production from Baker Mayfield since the bye week. You look at the Ravens game, which was really one of the telltale signs of how the season was going to go in terms of the weather, during that period. You look at the Eagles, the Texans. Those were games where the weather wasn't very good in terms of throwing the ball. Now, in that situation, where, you can't throw the ball with too much success or throw the ball, 20, 30 times, that low-key puts the Ravens at a disadvantage because in the situation, if they do get down based off the Browns, scoring early and putting up points like they did last week, you would have to expect Lamar Jackson to throw the ball more, and, weather can have some, impact on that with your ability to throw the ball. Now, like I said earlier, Baker Mayfield is that quarterback that's been able to find success throwing the ball off of play action on those design rollouts. That speed rollout may be a play that we see a little bit more this week that we've seen over the past few weeks. In a situation where as soon as Mayfield gets the ball, he immediately rolls out. It's not based off of play action. And then it's quick strike passing that you really see out of that speed out. Or whether it be targeting Jarvis Landry on an out route, maybe Rashard Higgins from the slot on the zig. You got to get the ball out quickly. And, Baker Mayfield definitely has the arm strength in order to make those throws. And he really showed, his ability to throw the ball in Jacksonville and in Nashville. But those were good weather games where the sun was out and we don't get to benefit from the good weather that they had last week. So in that situation where you don't have that good weather, you have to figure out ways to scheme up not only against the Ravens, but against the inclement weather as well. So in that situation, there may only be a few times, depending on how bad the winds get, that Kevin Stefanski decides to take that shot down the field. And in those situations that those shot plays are taken, and it will come out, throughout the game. Some of them that will connect, some of them won't. But those are the times where you need Jarvis Landry, Donovan Peoples-Jones, who's going to likely get more snaps, to come up big in those situations. Because in games where you have two teams that run the ball with success and try to limit how much they throw the ball, you need those big plays to connect. And those can really be the difference between winning and losing the game. So when I look at the run game, now you have to ask yourself the question, how will Kevin Stefanski's scheme open the run game? The Baltimore Ravens front four has been a group that has been, susceptible to the run. But on the same token, they show such a good ability to get quick penetration with those edge players. You look at Yannick Ngakoue, Matthew Judon, Pernell McPhee, but also on the interior, you have very big players like Calais Campbell and Derek Wolfe that can, take on a couple blockers and really clog up those run lanes and allowing those linebackers to, run free and get after the running back. In a situation that Kevin Stefanski is able to find success, you're going to see a lot of the time those offensive linemen for the Browns getting to the second level. You want to see Wyatt Teller pulling, being that pulling guard on zone schemes where he's able to open up a hole against a linebacker for Nick Chubb, which we've seen a lot, where Wyatt Teller would come up the left side of the offensive line, being that pulling guard and opening up a running lane. On the same side, you want Jedrick Wills to be a player that can hold his own and really hold the edge. They've been a team when running the ball that sometimes they'll allow a defensive lineman to be unblocked as they run off, to the strong side and all that weak side linebacker to be unblocked. Now, the athleticism that they have on the Baltimore Ravens in that linebacking group, they're a team that can find success of actually chasing down on the backside of a play. So in that situation, chip blocks or being able to really hold off on the interior where you don't have to hesitate as a running back can really make a difference for the Browns and their ability to, get those long runs. And again, weather is going to be a thing that's going to consistently come up because the snow and wind is going to be out there and it's going to be cold. The ball is going to be hard. Some passes may be dropped. This is a situation where you need consistency from your run game. And I fully expect Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt to come out this week and really set the tone early, for this offense. Because in a situation that you're able to establish the run game quickly, it really allows the Browns to show up and, I would say utilize the play action in a way that they're not necessarily prepared for. In terms of the Baltimore Ravens, like I said, they've been susceptible to the run, over the past few seasons that they've played against the Browns. And also this year, teams that's been able to, find success running the ball. You look at the Patriots, you look at the Philadelphia Eagles. Those are teams that have been able to run the ball with success against the Ravens for over 100 yards. And they don't really allow too many 100-yard rushers. But when they do, it's been against a team that usually has a zone scheme, exactly what the Browns utilize. So looking at the Browns offensive line, they likely are the most important group for the Browns this week. And really, I would say for the rest of the season. Now, they're still the number one rated offensive group in the NFL. J.C. Treader, Joe Bitonio, Wyatt Teller have been playing huge on the interior. Jedrick Wills is the number one rated offensive tackle of all rookies in his draft class. He has the fourth lowest pressure percentage of all tackles in the NFL in terms of passing sets. And then Jack Conklin has been a great veteran presence on the outside at that right tackle position, opening up running lanes and then also being solid in pass protection. Now, really the biggest question for them, because I fully believe they'll have success opening up running lanes, will be how they perform against the blitz. Again, the Baltimore Ravens are a team that love to utilize 6- and 7-man pressures against the offense. In a situation that they're sending 6 and 7 blitzers, when they decide to use that robber blitz, basically where they have, linebackers and defensive backs line up at the line of scrimmage, and then really they disguise who's going to be sent. It's a lot more difficult in order to recognize and identify who's going to be that blitzer coming off the line in the situation that they send a 5-man pressure where they drop back, say, Calais Campbell, a play that they had in the season opener where Calais Campbell, he drops back into coverage, he bats a ball down, and it results in interception. In those situations, you want Baker Mayfield to feel comfortable enough to really, throw the ball with success and not feel flustered. If you've really watched Mayfield closely over the last few weeks, he's performed the best when he's poised in the pocket. In those situations that he has that poise in the pocket really has been when he has a clean pocket and time to throw the ball and to really survey the field and go through all his reads. Now, once he gets pressured and he gets a little bit more antsy in the pocket, that's when things get a little bit more questionable. When he's kept clean, he has one of the highest passing ratings in the NFL. But on the flip side, against pressure, that's when some of his throws, can be a little bit questionable. But again, you look at his performances over the last few weeks, and he's shown improvement and gives the offense of coordinator and, Kevin Stefanski and all the skill players on the offense more confidence in him because it's his ability to put the ball on target. You look at last week, of all his passes, none of them technically, even considering incompletions, were throws that were off target. So he's delivering the ball in the right spot. He's making the right read. But when you really look at last week, he wasn't under pressure often. And on play action, he did have the one play where he got, flagged for intentional grounding, but he was quickly pressured from a defensive lineman that read the play action, smart, and reacted quickly. But on the situations where you're not on play action passing, you're in shotgun, you're in obvious pass situations, those are going to be the times where the Baltimore Ravens like to dial up pressure. And that's when it can get very frustrating for the offense. Can they find a way to continue to provide clean and consistent pockets for Baker Mayfield? If they're able to do that, Baker Mayfield is going to have himself another good game. Obviously being that the wind doesn't play too much of a factor where they can't throw the ball at all. If it's not one of those situations where the weather is, decent enough where they can throw the ball with some success, Mayfield, if kept clean and not bothered too much or pressured too much by these blitzing Baltimore Ravens linebackers and safeties. You look at Chuck Clark, their strong safety. He blitzes more than any defensive back in the NFL. So expect him to be in situations where he's blitzing from the slot, blitzing from the interior. And those are the packages and design blitzes and design pressures that the offensive line has to pick up. Now, the Cleveland Browns Tailgate Show is brought to you by Focus Clothing CLE. Focus Clothing is a small Black-owned apparel company in Cleveland. You can take advantage of their holiday sale and get yourself a new Focus trucker hat. Shop today at FocusClothingCLE.com. And we're back. Let's get right back into it. Again, you guys can check them out at FocusClothingCLE.com/shop to take advantage of that holiday sale. Now, looking at the receiving core, this is a group that has to step up this week. It's going to be a huge matchup for them, especially for Rashard Higgins and Donovan Peoples-Jones. Jarvis Landry is going to find some success. He always does. He's a very talented receiver, and he's someone that steps up in big time moments. He makes big catches. He's probably going to have a good portion of the target share, depending on how much the tight ends are involved in the offense. Now, in a situation where we can't throw the ball down the field a lot, there may be situations where Kevin Stefanski decides to basically run these clear out plays where you send the receivers deep and allow the tight ends to make plays underneath. In that situation, Austin Hooper and Harrison Bryant and David Njoku have to make some big plays. But if I had to pick a receiver to step up this week to really make a big play, I would really look at Donovan Peoples-Jones, just because of, one, how physical he is as a receiver. He's really good, one of the highest rated run blockers on this Browns team. He grades around the high 70s in terms of his run blocking according to Pro Football Focus, which is one of the higher run blocking grades in the league in terms of receivers. And also just how physical he is at the point of catch, where he doesn't allow too many defensive backs to get in his body. Now, you do look at last week where he had that drop on that slant route while they were inside the red zone early in the game, where you kind of got a little nervous, like what's going to happen. They only ended up with a field goal. But in that situation, Donovan Peoples-Jones really stepped up on that huge 75-yard touchdown where he was able to, make a double move. So in this situation where play action passing is the area that Baker Mayfield has his most success, you need someone to really be that player that can make those plays in a situation that, say if it's a wobbler or the air makes the ball come up short, you need someone that's a big bodied receiver that can make those contested catches. Now, is he purely a vertical threat? I wouldn't necessarily say so. He's more of a player that you want to win those jump balls and really out physical smaller defensive backs. Now, in a situation that Tramon Williams does play, I would expect Rashard Higgins to be that player that can come in and really, set the tone by winning those intermediate routes in the slot. But in the situation he doesn't play, you really look at Donovan Peoples-Jones as that player that has to really match up against, say, a Marlon Humphreys or Marcus Peters and really just be physical. You look at the season opener where Odell Beckham was really kind of frustrated throughout that game because those cornerbacks on the outside are so good. So when you're able to find some success in throwing that ball to them, that really opens up what you can do in terms of the rest of the offense. So I'm really hoping that, he can be that player that steps up this week, but also that we see some more production out of the tight end group. Austin Hooper, again, he's listed as questionable with that hip injury, but in a situation that he doesn't play, you really hope that Harrison Bryant can just find that confidence that he had early in the season. He has had some fumbling issues over the past few games. You hope that he can get past that. But again, you just want to see the Titans get more involved. David Njoku was the highest offensive graded player against the Ravens back in week 1, had the only offensive touchdown, had some huge contested catches, and really he's shown the ability to get away from some linebackers, Patrick Queen, LJ Fort, and you want to see him to do that again with success this week. And then also, I just want to give a quick shout out to my guy, Cleveland Browns on Twitter. He's been commenting throughout the show. Like you said, the Cleveland Browns, they got to play tough. And one of the best ways to play tough is in the trenches. And that's the best way for the Browns to really find some success. Now, speaking of the trenches, you look at the defensive line, and really, I would say really the entire front seven of this Browns defense. How do they contain Lamar Jackson from escaping the pocket and really using his mobility to make the most of this opportunity for him? I would really say it comes down to their ability to set the edge. In the situation that you can set the edge and keep him inside of the pocket as much as possible, that really increases your chances to limit what Lamar Jackson does best, which is use his legs. Of course, there's going to be design play actions where he's going to get out of the pocket. He's very athletic. He's a very talented quarterback that's very mobile. So he's going to find ways, of course, to get out of the pocket and use his legs. But in the situation that he does get out of the pocket, tackling and not allowing huge runs is going to be another way that the Browns have to find some success in terms of limiting what he can do. I really broke down the tape of them playing in the first week, And Lamar Jackson always kind of finds these ways to kind of wiggle or hesitate for a second, act like he's going to run out of bounds, and then scramble for a few more yards. Now, in no shape or form am I saying play dirty when I say this, but in those situations where he wants to fiddle around the sideline, you have to hit him. Now, there's going to be some times where a ref might throw a flag for unnecessary roughness. But on the same token, on one of those hits where he gets blown up, they won't, because he's tiptoeing around the sideline. These are the plays where you really have to assert your dominance, make your presence be known against this Baltimore Ravens offense. Don't allow Lamar Jackson to kind of just wiggle and juke around players or kind of give you those ticky-tacky tackles that they usually do against him. And a lot of teams do this on a weekly basis. We really want Lamar Jackson to limit what he can do. Force him to be a pocket passer. It's something that he's kind of struggled with a little bit just because he hasn't had the time to throw the ball or really find his targets down the field. And then 2, once he gets out of that pocket and he starts running the ball, he is now a runner. As long as you don't hit him in the head or you don't hit him while he's sliding, you can blow him up and really force him to really think twice about running the ball. In that situation, if the Ravens have to throw the ball and he's only throwing for 150 yards with 20 passing attempts, that's a very tough game to win where you're not getting a lot in terms of your run game. And that's really where the Browns defense has to step up the most. If you can limit the run game and find success in terms of stopping the run, which they've done throughout the season, then you can help, limit what Lamar Jackson does with success. And then also, like I said, you look at the Ravens offensive line. I do believe that the Browns front four can overwhelm this group. Tyree Phillips and DJ Fluker aren't very good at the right tackle position. Patrick McCarry has shown an ability to get beat sometimes. Then also Ben Powers. The only really consistent player I would say along that Ravens offensive line has been Orlando Brown. In that situation that they can get, a performance out of this defensive line, you look at Olivier Vernon, Adrian Claiborne. You need a really big week out of Sheldon Richardson, because the Ravens, again, when you look at their offensive scheme and how they like to run the football, is they're north and south runners. So typically, if you're running north and south, you're not running outside zone plays too often. You're looking at gap schemes where basically this is the gap that you have. Once you get the ball, you run, you go, you put your head down, you lower your shoulder pads, and you move your legs to get extra yardage. In that situation where you have teams that like to run up the middle, then you really have to rely on basically the interior of your defensive line. So you need a big game from Sheldon Richardson. You need Larry Ogunjobi, who's in a contract year, to step up. This is big for him. In situations where you go against your division rival that is going to run the ball, you want to see Larry Ogunjobi have a good performance. Early in the season, he was one of the highest rated run defenders in the league, according to Pro Football Focus. So you want to see him, replicate that magic that he had early in the season. And then also when you start to rep in these defensive linemen, Jordan Elliott, Vincent Taylor, Joe Jackson, Porter Gustin when he comes in, Adrian Claiborne. You want these players to really make the most of those reps and not get out of their assignment. When you have a team that runs based off a gap scheme where basically who's ever in front of you, that's who you block to open up a hole, you can't over pursue. You can't get too deep, on your read when you're that edge player, ready to be Olivier Vernon or Myles Garrett. So the Browns have to play smart. They have to play physical, but they also have to make sure they don't get too far in their run fits where they can allow the Baltimore Ravens to find success running the football. Now, the Cleveland Browns Tailgate Show is brought to you by Sports Illustrated BrownsDigest. Again, you guys can follow the website. We will have a live game thread as I will update the website throughout the game with content. You can check out the website every day for team news, game day threads, and featured content. Again, that's at si.com/NFL/Browns. And we're going to get into last few topics of the show. Look at the matchups to watch. Again, Myles Garrett versus DJ Fluker. I've talked about this throughout the show. You really want to see Myles Garrett take advantage of them because they're not very good in terms of pass protection. And hopefully this week the referees know how to, throw a flag. It's that yellow thing that's in their pocket where you take it and you throw it up after there's a holding call. something Myles Garrett didn't get at all last week and really didn't get against the Jaguars either. It's starting to become a consistent theme that they're not giving Myles Garrett those holding calls. He'll have he'll have a hand right in his face mask, still not getting, those holding calls. And then also you just look at the fact that typically a lot of teams aren't double teaming him for some reason, and he's getting a lot of one-on-ones on the edge. And I highly doubt that the Baltimore Ravens are going to leave DJ Fluker and Tyree Phillips on the island. So on the flip side, you look at the opportunities that now leaves for Porter Gustin, Olivier Vernon, and Adrian Claiborne to really take advantage, in the situation that, Orlando Brown is matched up with Myles Garrett. Looking at the offensive line, the Browns' offensive line really has to step up huge against the Ravens and whoever the blitzers are, whether that be a linebacker, whether that be a defensive back. The Ravens defensive coordinator does a very good job of disguising who's going to be that free runner. And that free runner is usually the player that causes the biggest problem for the quarterback, because rather he has to get the ball quickly out of his hands, and that could result in a mistake, or it can result in a huge sack or a fumble, something that the Browns have, struggled with in the past. But again, Kevin Stefanski and his coaching staff have did a good job of coaching discipline and really just allowing the quarterback to make the smart play, Baker Mayfield or the receiver, just understand, if it's not there now, there's always next play. And then lastly, you look at Mark Andrews and the Browns linebackers. Mark Andrews has been able to find success against this Browns linebacking group. So, this is a situation you want them to really step up and not allow a lot of free runners, allow them to get, in that deep middle part of the field where Mark Andrews has really been the most dangerous. He is still one of the better tight ends in the NFL. They don't have Nick Boyle, and then Luke Wilson's also dealing with an injury. So expect Lamar Jackson to still target Mark Andrews on a consistent basis throughout this game. Again, the Cleveland Browns Tailgate Show is sponsored by Focus Clothing. Focus Clothing is a small Black-owned apparel company in Cleveland. You can take advantage of their holiday sale and gift a premium fabric crop hoodie for a family member or your lovely lady friend. Shop today at FocusClothingCLE.com. Again, that's FocusClothingCLE.com. You also can follow them on social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter at FocusClothingCLE.
Who said that t-shirt was only for the summer?
So looking at our 3 keys to winning the game tonight, number 1, force Lamar Jackson to become a pocket passer. Lamar Jackson, obviously very mobile, makes a lot of plays when escaping the pocket. In the situation that the Browns are able to force him to become a pocket passer and have to throw the ball more often than not, this really becomes a formula for success pretty much against anyone that has success against the Baltimore Ravens. Is forcing Lamar Jackson to sit inside the pocket and really become a pocket passer. Number 2, don't turn the ball over. Baker Mayfield has done an outstanding job not turning the ball over, no interceptions, not fumbling, which has been huge. This is really the opportunity for Mayfield to continue to build upon that success that he's been able to have over the past few weeks. When you don't turn the ball over, you don't give the opposite team generally good field position, and also it limits the amount of offensive possessions that they can have. In the situation, again, that the weather is inclement and the winds and the weather just isn't very good, this is a great opportunity for you to really run the ball and, to really control that time of possession. In a situation where you have 2 teams that like to run the ball and controlling the time of possession, turnovers are really the biggest difference in who wins the game and who loses. And then also keeping Baker Mayfield upright will be the third important key to winning this game. Don't allow those Ravens blitzers to run free, and this is going to place the Browns in a good position to win this game. So my score prediction for tonight, I have the Browns winning 23-13. It won't be a super high scoring game like it was last week, again, because the weather, but I expect the Browns to run the ball more this week and try to get out to an early lead. A potential, 17-3 lead at halftime it's only 2 possessions, but it is enough based on the struggles that Lamar Jackson and the Baltimore Ravens offense has had throwing the ball. So again, I want to thank you guys so much for joining me for the Cleveland Browns Tailgate Show. We're officially 15 minutes from kickoff. Again, make sure you guys check out the Sports Illustrated website for the game thread. I'll be back again next week. The Browns game against the Giants was flexed out of the 1 o'clock slot, and we'll be playing that Sunday Night Football. So I'll definitely be going live again. You guys can check me out at 7:15 next week or technically this week on Sunday. Again, go Browns, and hopefully we can win this and continue to chug on as the Browns will be looking to go 10-3, and the Cleveland Browns are set up to clinch a playoff spot for the first time since 2002. I'll see you guys later. Peace.